I'm Cornell Clayton, Director of the Foley Institute, and on behalf of the Institute, I want to welcome you out to our event today. Before I introduce our speaker today, I just want to, first of all, remind you that we have our annual Media and Politics Symposium on Thursday at 4:30 in Gertsen 21. The focus this year is on micro-targeting, which you may be familiar with from the Cambridge Analytica scandal that occurred earlier. I also want to thank our co-sponsor for today's event, and that's the Asia Studies Program, who brought out Professor Ha. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Yong-Chool Ha. He's the Korea Foundation Professor at the Jackson School of International Studies at the University of Washington, and also a Professor Emeritus of Seoul National University. He's visited North Korea more than 3 times. He's written extensively on North Korea, South Korea, East Asia, and on Russian foreign policy. His broad academic interests are on the comparative study of late industrial and social change. Join me now in welcoming Professor Ha.
Well, thank you for coming to my talk. This is my first visit to Washington State University. I know it's a rivalry between UW and, but I noticed Washington State University is doing better than UW, so I hope you continue to succeed in your football games. And this topic today I'm going to talk about, I'm sure you have been hearing about this North Korea. It's oftentimes nowadays. But then, the first comment I want to start off before I get into this lecture is the image of North Korea now in the United States is so bad. It's killing its the cousin, and then executing former officials on the spot. So images of Kim Jong-un, the leader, and then North Korea as a whole has been so negative in this country. But I assure you that North Korea is not another ISIS. They are very rational, strategic, and then basically survival-oriented system and people. So with this sort of short backdrop, I just want to directly go into today's talk. I don't know how much you know about the nuclear system and nuclear issue. So I want to basically cover as much as could, although given the time limit, I don't know how far I can, but I try to cover all. I sort of exercised before I came over here to meet the time limits. So basically I'll provide you with an overview of North Korea and North Korea's nuclear programs, and then a brief history of U.S. dealings with North Korean nuclear issues, depending upon the different regimes or administrations. And then a chronological overview of the recent developments and evaluation. And the famous now, the Singapore summit, and its aftermath. And then challenges and prospects. So then, finally, I would like to conclude why North Korea issue is not simply about nuclear issue. What are the broader issues involved beyond the nuclear issues? Okay? So this is the geographical location of the Korean Peninsula. If you look at it, actually, very small, relatively very small. Absolutely not too bad, but relatively very small. So adjacent to both Russia and China. Actually, mostly with China, but then, North Korea. And then 17 miles of sharing border with Russia. So, for example, here, now they are talking about if the both North-South Korea are united or unified, then the railroad starts from here, Busan port, all the way here, and then throughout Trans-Siberian Railroad, reaching the Amsterdam within a matter of a week and 10 days. Now it takes more than a month from Busan to Amsterdam. Okay, so let's go on. This is the famous or notorious for North Koreans, the Google map of North Korea indicating how much they are suffering from energy shortage compared to the south. So only one spot there, that's their capital, Pyongyang. And then when was historical North Korea actually established? Actually, the final one here, 1945. At the end of the World War II, also from the liberation of Japanese colonial rule, August 15, 1945, and then August, you might want to focus on the last line, 1948, September 9th. That's the one the DPRK, the official name of the North Korea is the Democratic Republic, People's Republic. So don't be confused with the South Korea. South Korea stands for ROK, Republic of Korea. So sometimes they think North Korea is more democratic because of the name of the country. So anyway, then obviously U.S. engagement in the Peninsula. More than 30,000 U.S. soldiers, troops were killed during Korean War. Still, they are stationed there. Let's go further. Here, this is the DMZ, demilitarized zone. Only 4 kilometers wide, 2 kilometers each side. So look at how close Seoul is from the demilitarized zone. So, and then the length of the this DMZ is about 160 miles, something like that. Okay? So this is the rough comparison between North and South Korea. So the population is only less than half of the South Korea, but area-wise, it's much wider. South Korea is close to the size of Minnesota in the United States. Any questions? No, all right. So you see, the reason why I'm showing you this is a growing gap in economic and other social indicators. For example, this GDP. We can see there's no comparison. Now more than 40 to 1 kind of pocket income difference between the two sides. This backdrop we should remind ourselves of. Why? Because of increasing gap, particularly with the collapse of the Soviet system, the North Korea was isolated and then comparatively suffering, doing worse than South Korea. So they had to find some means to protect themselves. That's why they start developing nuclear programs in and around the time of ending Cold War. Am I too fast? Probably not. Okay. If I am too slow, just check me. Then, in general, nuclear weapons. It's just a kind of, as I said, an explosive device that derives as a destructive force from nuclear reactions. So there are two types of nuclear reactions. One is fission. It's basically regular atomic bomb. It's a fusion. It's a hydrogen bomb. So hydrogen bomb is much more explosive, much more powerful than the regular fission-based atomic bomb. Then to produce nuclear weapons, you can use two kinds of fissile materials. One is plutonium, which is produced after the nuclear reactors use uranium as a byproduct. Plutonium actually remains. Another way is enriching uranium-235. So what I call highly enriched uranium, HEU. You might you might come across with this term HEU, highly enriched uranium, in many writings on nuclear programs. So basically either they use plutonium or enriched uranium to produce the nuclear weapons. And then there are two kinds of nuclear reactors. One is light water reactors, the other is graphite moderated reactor. What the Soviets provided in North Korea with originally was graphite moderated reactor, what they call Yong-Chool. We'll come to that shortly, but Yong-Chool site. That is, it is known that if you use graphite moderated reactor, actually you produce more plutonium compared to light water reactor. So that's why there's a need for replacing graphite moderated reactor with the light water reactor in 1994, the agreement between North Korea and the United States. So this is a basic backdrop of knowledge about the program. And what are the scope of nuclear programs? Basically, there are four issue areas. One is fuel material, as I just mentioned. And second thing is nuclear testing ground. I'm sure you're familiar with Nevada here in the United States. So testing site. You need testing site. Why? Because you want to test the power capability of nuclear warheads, and then also to miniaturize. Why do you need to miniaturize warheads? Otherwise, it's too heavy, too bulky. Then it's very difficult to mount them on top of the missiles. So in order to have a long distance ICBM type of missiles, you need to have very light but powerful warheads. That's why. So warheads. Next thing is warheads, right? Testing ground, then their warheads. So now the issues are power of these new nuclear warheads in North Korea, and then their numbers and weights of warheads. These are the basically important issues. So miniaturization is critical to mount on missiles. Delivery, as you know, all is a missile system, right? So even then, what kind of the fuel did they use? Liquid fuel or solid fuel? Obviously, they would prefer solid fuel because it takes less time fueling, and flight distance. I'll show you shortly, and accuracy. Right? So these are when you talk about the North Korean nuclear programs or any other country nuclear programs, we are talking about this. So for example, Iranian case, they don't have, for example, nuclear warheads yet, or neither delivery. They're probably talking about fuel material stage. So there's a huge difference between other cases in North Korea, as we'll come back to shortly. So I don't want to dwell too much about the chronology, but if you look at this part, the red part, you will see there when the North Korean nuclear program started, under whose auspices, actually, early 1960s, with the Soviet systems. Okay? And then all of a sudden we now jump to 1993, North Korea nuclear test. The successfully tested the Nodong missile. So everybody become a little bit alert to this new development of North Korea program. So in other words, here what I want to direct your attention to is exactly 1990s. From late 1980s, but particularly 1990s, North Korean nuclear activities became much more active compared to the previous times. Exactly because of this sudden sense of isolation and then threat with the collapse of the Soviet bloc and Soviet Union in particular. Because Soviet Union used to have the mutual defense treaty with North Korea, under which North Korea felt a little bit more comfortable. But the Soviets actually changed that treaty. Right. Then the 1994, what they call Geneva Agreement between the United States and North Korea. This is the agreed, what they call famously agreed framework, which was very close to success. But then with Bush, the administration coming to power, actually, as you know, nothing but Clinton kind of policy simply abolished or the stopped 994 framework. I'll come back shortly, but the thing is, more recently, there's six-party talks. Six-party talks, as you probably heard, continued starting from Bush administration in 2003, but then they produced some kind of visible agreements, 2007 and 2005 and 7. But then the implementation under the Obama administration and beyond actually did not make much progress. I will explain to you why. Why the U.S., particularly under the Obama administration, actually nothing much done. And then all of a sudden, under the Trump administration, people began to feel the sense of urgency about North Korea. Very shortly. So I don't know dwell upon this chronology more, right? But so this is my synopsis of North Korean nuclear program based upon all the chronologies I just the first one started the nuclear program in the early 1960s under Soviet Union, which I already mentioned. Acceleration of program with the collapse of the Union, already mentioned. Totally isolated and confronting the flourishing South Korea. That's the threat, the factor there. And then let's say, different approaches to solution North Korean nuclear weapons had been taken up to now, but they're without much success. I will explain to you why. For example, this is the Yongbyon nuclear site, nuclear reactor. As I said, the graphite moderated reactor, which must have produced a lot more volume of plutonium to produce nuclear bombs. So also look at this, how widespread North Korean nuclear facilities all over North Korea, particularly North Korea is known to be mountainous, the area of the country. So it's not like Iran or Iraq, kind of sand kind. I mean, you can put your head on the sand, but everybody can see you. I mean, but in North Korea, when there are so many mountains, underground, it's not easy to even locate nuclear facilities. That's why we need to consider these geographical factors and the limits of denuclearization of North Korea. Am I going too fast? So, as I meant, there are different kinds of ballistic missiles. Submarine, short range onto submarine SLBM down there, depending upon the distance it can cover. So, as I said, as I'll be talking about shortly, one of the reasons why the sense of urgency almost erupted under Trump administration exactly because of the possibility of North Korea successfully developing ICBM, which could reach the mainland of the United States. The first thing that I've usually been asked in local radios in Seattle area about North nuclear programs is exactly whether North Korean missiles could reach Seattle. I said, theoretically yes, but politically it's a crazy idea. But anyhow. So let me just summarize the level of nuclear development of North Korea and nuclear negotiation, later nuclear negotiation. Statistics. Today, North Korea has conducted 116 ballistic missile launches since the April 1984, with 85 or 73% of total launched since total of them launched since Kim, the current leader, young leader, 33-year-old guy, came to power in December 2011. Actually, when he was positioned in the top leadership of North Korea, he was 28 years old, something like that. So very young guy. Can you believe 20 years old handling nuclear weapons? Wow. It's mind-boggling, right? All right. And then the degree of the completion of nuclear weapons programs in North Korea is close to completion, but not enough to reach U.S. mainland yet. It's a tantalizing kind of situation. That's why, as I said, as I was saying, that's why negotiation compromises probably close. Only now. My general proposition here is that when any country's nuclear program is so primitive, no possibility of negotiation. You can even let's say military strike facility without much problem. But by the time when it reaches North Korea level, it's not easy to strike because the impact is so enormous. It's so damaging. In fact, close to 500,000 will die if something military conflict happens around Peninsula, including many Americans living there, including U.S. military. But only when certain country reaches North Korean level of development, maybe they are willing to come to negotiation. So this is sort of an irony there. I mean, without certain level of development, U.S. may not be even strong interest in negotiation, although they are engaged, but then they are not serious. Why? It was not U.S. And North Korean nuclear system or missiles was not threatening enough to the United States. Only now they began to feel it. That's why President Obama, retiring President Obama, actually warned President Trump about possible missile development in North Korea. That's why the sense of urgency began to develop in and around the Washington, D.C. and beyond. Even Seattle, it's amazing. People keep asking me how threatening they should feel about North Korea. Yeah. So this is the current assessment of North Korean nuclear programs. Fission material, plutonium 239 and uranium 235. North Korea is estimated to have secured the plutonium 54 kilograms, highly enriched for the uranium 785 kilograms. Okay? Hecker, the famous U.S. physicist, who oftentimes visited North Korean nuclear facilities. Remember the nuclear reactor? He actually went there. He was one of the few whom North Korea invited to physically see the facilities. Hecker said nuclear materials, he estimated 2 to 40 kilograms of plutonium and 2 to 400 times of rice. 400 kilograms of HEU. Okay? So in other words, his estimation is that 20 to 25 nuclear weapons versus the Defense Intelligence Agency says estimated 60. So you see there's a wide gap in estimation of the number of nuclear bombs that North Korea must have or might have produced. That's why there's a different perceptions of North Korea nuclear bombs. All right, so I just want to jump on to next because that's the gist of it. All right, but let me before that, re-entry technology is in other words when the missile go out of space, then when it re-enters into the atmosphere, then there's some adjustment in temperature kind of technology, which Hecker estimated that the North Korea has not reached that level yet. So, but my point here is that there's not a single fixed estimate, the single estimate. It depends upon the perceptions of North Korea. Also, knowledge level of each individual who estimates. All right. So briefly, U.S. approach to North Korea, actually there are different approaches. Clinton's or Carrot's approach, as I mentioned, Geneva Agreed Framework. Bush's stick policy, the axis of evil, and the six-party talks, 2027, which hasn't produced much. Obama's the maximum pressure and the unconditional denuclearization didn't. No carrots, no carrots, no sticks. Obama's famous idea of strategic patience, to me, I didn't see much strategy, only patience. So, to me, frankly, didn't make much progress in North Korea programs. Okay. although I like Obama, but still, in terms of this foreign policy, that's why I usually joke by saying strategy, no strategy, only patience. He's a man of patience indeed. Anyway, sequencing versus big deal. This is the, I mean, Trump, as I'll be saying, I will come back about Trump, so I don't want to have too much about it. So, given the time, I may not handle the whole discussion, but at least I feel obligated to lay out the basic questions. So what is the background for the sense of urgency, which I partially dealt with? Second, what are the major developments in recent months? And what sudden change to negotiation move? Well, fourth, what makes this time different from the past? Developments since the U.S.-North Korean summit in Singapore. These are the perhaps I thought you might be interested in addressing, but I may not cover all of them given the time. I was told I should finish sternly by 1 o'clock. So. Perhaps that's the message of the speaker Foley. Anyhow, so why sudden sense of urgency? I basically what we explained. That is, North Korean nuclear program has not reached its completion, but threatening enough. So if North Korea's nuclear facilities missile could reach mainland China, mainland United States, actually, U.S. might have to strike them. But they haven't reached that level. So on the part of North Korea, they have to consider this factor. I mean, possible military strike. On the part of the United States, if they are force themselves to strike North Korea, it could create a lot of the problems beyond the North Korea in the region, obviously. So that's why it's a high time. It's a good time for both sides to sit down and then talk. So to me, the structural condition of North Korean nuclear program status, I think, is the most important factor in driving the two sides for some kind of negotiation. It's not about Trump's, sort of personal or ingenuity or something. It's more about the structural condition. To me, I highlight. In other words, if North Korean nuclear program passes a certain stage, I don't think the talks are possible. So, Trump administration at the initial, last year, for example, it's so much confusion within the Trump administration as to what to do with North Korea. So to the point where, even North Korean Kim Jong-un called the Trump daughter, and then Trump in turn called them the rocket man. All this kind of sort of infuriating the exchanges of words throughout the 1917. But all of a sudden, I don't have time to play with some funny words that they exchange too long. But that's but only coming to this year, starting from the beginning of this year, actually, the situation sort of began to shift dramatically toward the more or less peaceful mode, starting from the Pyeongchang, South Korean Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. So I think the North Korean regime began to play some peace game with the South Korea, and South Korea actually was also trying to allure North Korea into some kind of negotiation with not only with South Korea but also with the United States. So starting from February this year, the mood began to change dramatically. Okay? So I don't want to go into detail but then I want to summarize. Before I go there, look at this. The Kim Jong-un, North Korean leader, actually before the summit, they declared that they pronounced that they destroyed this nuclear testing site at the Punggye-ri, at the northern part of North Korea. So they said they showed some gestures before they come to the summit meeting in Singapore. So then let's go to the Singapore summit quickly. It was held June 12, 2018. I think it's a very historic moment, very important moment. I'll explain to you why it's important. But US, I don't like many of the Trump policy items. But I think his approach to North Korean nuclear is quite new, quite different. There's some positive aspect to it. Anyhow, they met and then they decided basically they end up a joint declaration, agreeing to, it's worth reading, to establish new U.S. DPRK relations. That's a really more broad kind of a goal that they set. Build a lasting and stable peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. This approach was not there prior to this summit. Always prior to this summit, the negotiators, diplomats usually focus on technical aspects of nuclear weapons, not this kind of political approach to North Korean situations. That's why there's something new about Trump's approach. And the recover POW and then missing in action remains. Kim also committed to work toward complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. This is for the first time. And Trump committed to provide security guarantees for North Korea, which North Korea has been demanding or asking for a number of years. So that's the gist of the declaration, joint declaration. Then what happened since the Singapore summit? Many, but I just highlight for example, this one. The remains of 55 American servicemen who died during the Korean War are flown out of North Korea to be returned to the United States, particularly in Hawaii, right? Which Kim Jong-un, the leader, promised in the Singapore summit declaration, as I just mentioned. Okay? And then in September, quite recently, 19th, for the first time, actually, because people were so much concerned about the fact that the lack of specificity of the Singapore summit. Also, the second thing people were concerned about was, or has been, Kim Jong-un, the leader, never himself mentioned the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. But this time, when the two leaders, both North-South Korean leaders, met in Pyongyang on September 19th this year, the two leaders agreed to the Pyongyang Joint Declaration once again. It says, particularly the last part, Dongchangli missile engine site and the launching platforms, under the observations of international experts, they might destroy, they dismantle. And then I will emphasize the following: to take additional steps, like the dismantling of nuclear facilities in Yongbyong. Remember the Yongbyong reactor that I showed you? He is willing to destroy it if the United States takes corresponding measures. And then he also publicly announced his intention of completely denuclearizing Korean Peninsula for the first time in his own words. That's why September 19th, the joint declaration between two sides, two Koreas, I think it's meaningful. Right. And then now, where it stands now, I think U.S. Secretary of State Mike, October 7th, he revisited, I think it's fourth time, to Pyongyang. And then now they are working on details. Then also second summit. So on the one hand, on the working level, they're trying to work out some kind of the compromise between the two sides, and then how to present that or reflect that in the second summit they are now preparing. So these are two things they are working on. So let me briefly go over as a kind of summarization. But after this one, I will make some remarks, very critical remarks about what are the fundamental differences between the North Korea and the United States in terms of denuclearization. So I think still it's raising this. What's so different this time is particularly sobering because of what has not been done in the past. First, the degree of nuclear development in North Korea and North Korea's commitment to denuclearization. In other words, what is so different about this time is that, as I said earlier, North Korea has developed nuclear programs to the point where they could reach the United States very soon. Okay? It was not the case in the past. That's why many people say, oh, Trump did not reach the details about nuclear programs and denuclearization like what they did in 2007, 2005. To me, that's nonsense, because 2007, 2005, North Korea was not ready for compromise. Why? Because they are not ready. They didn't develop the nuclear programs enough. Okay? Second, the U.S. sense of urgency and sanctions and pressures, as I already mentioned. This time, U.S. began to feel much more sense of urgency than previous time. That's why this time is so different. Third, the initiative to have a summit with South Korea on the part of the two Koreas. And then North Korea this time never mentioned about U.S. troop withdrawal, which they used to propose as a precondition, or even kind of a written kind of condition for U.S. to take. So this is quite unusual. And then China also now this time very serious. Even though there's trade war between the U.S. and China, China never failed to say Peninsula denuclearization is important. And then, so finally, I want to mention this. Well, two things. One is people tend to only look at the military side of nuclear weapons. I have to share with you, even given this time limit, even if there's some limitations. For example, if you look at the Soviet history, Khrushchev, 1965, in the secretive 20th Party Congress, he gave up the class conflicts or inability of war with the capitalists because of what? Because of nuclear weapons. In other words, nuclear weapons not only brings about military advantage, but also it may bring about some kind of dilemma for political leaders. So we should not be blinded by this military advantage side only. I think then what kind of a dilemma nuclear programs might have brought to North Korea? Exactly the last one. The North Korean domestic economic conditions. So dire. So much so that Kim Jong-un even said, what's the use of nuclear weapons when the people are starving? See? So to me, we should open ours more wider in looking at the possible dilemmas that nuclear weapons might bring. My position on the collapse of Soviet Union is exactly, to me, the nuclear weapons had something to do with the collapse of Soviet Union. Why? With the introduction of the nuclear parity with the United States in late 1960s and early 70s, Soviet leaders became quite complacent based upon their international status. So this kind of international status actually used to be used as a way of justifying their lack of reform domestically, ultimately leading to the breakdown of Soviet system. So I strongly urge students to look at this kind of dilemmatic aspects of nuclear weapon. Nuclear weapon brings both military advantages as well as the political dilemmas. So, and then last analogy is this. I used to, for example, branching theory. When the tree grows up, the stalk, the stem, just straightforward, right? It grows up. But when the tree starts branching out, then you don't predict in which direction branching actually develops or expands. In other words, this analogy is used for me as a way of justifying possible North Korea's strategic shift. In other words, we should not extend what we have known about North Korea up to now to the future of North Korea's options. So this is in other words, as I said, they are not ISIS. They are not radical. They are not even the irrational So if we got stuck with the old image or perception, then it's very hard to understand why they began to change, where they are changing, how they are changing. Yeah. So now, thorny issue, negotiating. So before that, let me just put out this. I see 5 groups in the United States about their attitude toward the North Korean nuclear. So try to put yourself into one of these, or more than one of these. Moral fundamentalists. I'm sure there are many in America. In other words, those who say, without the collapse of North Korean system leader, no possibility. Right? I'm sure even some of you may fall into this category. I hope not, but anyhow, dualistic skeptics. For those diplomats who used to negotiate with North Korea. They think they know enough about North Korea. And those they experienced so much frustration in negotiation with the North Korea. That's what I call dualistic. A lot of Washington D.C. Think tank things. Whenever I'm visiting Washington D.C., about 80% of think tank people actually belong to this category, basically, because they think they know about North Korea. To me, I think they know, but their knowledge of North Korea is very static, because to justify their continuing positions. Third one, famously or notoriously Trumpian pessimists. They think because of Trump, it is going to fail, kind of thing. Right? So there are some, I'm sure, in Washington State. Anyway, so. And then I usually call Washington State a fatalistic Democrat. Yeah. The fourth category, cautious optimism. I put myself into this category. In other words, as I said, for the reasons that I laid out, I think there's enough room for cautious optimism. Finally, romantic wishful thinkers. In other words, South Korea. A lot of South Koreans, well, now we're going to be unified because of after we dissolve. I think too romantic. So I see the basically 5 groups in America about how they think about North Korean nuclear issues. I think if you look at this coalition, past coalition now, 1 to 3 is a very strong coalition. About pessimistic assessment of future of North Korean nuclear negotiations. So, to me, that's why domestically that's kind of an important issue here. But so let me just skip because there's some more. This is the basic difference. I think I can summarize my talk with this. Basically, what North Korea wants is gradual action for action, but step by step. In other words, stage by stage. So let me read it for you briefly. A gradual action for action process in which the North is going to be rewarded for each move it takes toward denuclearization. Kim expressed the hope that the DPRK and the United States would build mutual trust through dialogue and relevant sides would take phased and synchronous. In other words, if North Korea, for example, dismantle, let's say, the nuclear testing site, then one phase, right? Then U.S. will reward North Korea with something else. Then they want the next stage. That's what North Korea wants. But on the other hand, Trump's the original approach was fast approach. With a timetable as quickly as 6 months to a year, and the economic benefits coming only at the end. You see the complete opposite positions. Right? It's not one-to-one, but only at the end. But now, Trump team's approach now, I think, has changed also. Before I go there, let me just put out this. That is, fundamentally speaking, there is a trust deficit between two sides. That's the issue. Regardless of technical negotiation, why? They don't trust each other. That's why the U.S. side has consistently advocating CVID, complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement, CVID. But then, obviously now, Trump administration seems to have changed their mind, softening up of this principle. Why? North Koreans also changed. That is, North Korea, as I said earlier, in the summit between North and South Korea, September 19th, remember? Kim Jong-un suggested he is willing to dismantle the main nuclear site, the reactor site that you saw, by inviting experts, meaning verifiers, by inviting the outsiders, as a symbol of symbol of building trust between North Korea and the United States. I think Trump seems to have bought this kind of idea. In other words, CBI simply means it's almost impossible. As I said, as I showed the North Korean map, mountainous map. What do you mean? I mean, it's good idealistic words, comprehensive, irreversible, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement. CBID is ideal. It's ideal, but to me, it's unrealistic. I mean, even if they physically dismantle nuclear facilities, there are people, scholars, scientists who know knowledge or know-how to build nuclear weapons in a matter of a few weeks. You cannot kill them all, right? If we were to mean by being comprehensive. So, to me, no matter how I think about this, there's no way to accomplish CBI. That's why, to me, I propose political CBI, meaning we should be able to create the conditions under which North Korea would not revert back to the possible use or threat of nuclear weapons or with nuclear weapons. In other words, at this point, what is going on is how to negotiate differences in approaches to nuclear weapons. And then, as I said, it might take some time, but then, since also what is so distinct about this time is what I missed is this is a summit meeting. Top leaders agree. In the past years, only functionaries, technocrats. So this time, neither side want to fail, much more so than before. So, given this kind of different approaches now, they are trying to narrow down the differences while they are building up trust. So, to me, ultimately, how much they narrow down this differences in approaches will be a critical factor in making this time of negotiation success or failure. So let me just conclude by saying some positive signs compared to the past and thus slightly optimistic. Commitment by the top leaders, Soviet diplomacy. How to overcome trust deficit, I already mentioned that. Can North Korea be trusted? I omit the word be, right? Can North Korea be trusted? Agreement on the big principle of CBIG. CBIG means comprehensive, verifiable, irreversible guarantee. Expected, but not realistic. Entire progress will move faster than in the past, but hurdles here and there, especially in terms of scope and speed of denuclearization, particularly in the area of verification. So, also, the mediating role of China and South Korea and Russia would be essential in making this situation successful. Okay? And my final word is this. Then, why the denuclearization of Peninsula of North Korea is so important? The problem of the United States has been that the U.S. side has not recognized any strategic interest in North Korea so far. They have solely been interested in technical aspects of denuclearization. On the other hand, North Korea has been insisting upon the recognition of U.S. interest in North Korea. How far, to an extent, the Trump administration will go for that, that's another critical issue, beyond the nuclear issue. Why? Given the ongoing rivalry between U.S. and China's rivalry, the competition for hegemony in the region, North Korea could now become more important than before. Okay? And also, if North Korea has not, it's not going to be denuclearized, then South Korea might go for nuclear, Japan will go for nuclear. So we'll take a domino, the effect of remaining North Korean nuclear weapons, to me, is quite serious. But more positively, I think Korean Peninsula, as I showed in the beginning, the map strategically it's in between China and Japan and beyond, and Russia too. So the role, the significance of the peninsula, I think, remains very, very important to the long-term security strategic interests of the United States in the future. So that's why, if you look at the flurry of summits and the foreign ministerial level of the talks going around nowadays, we should be very carefully watching over these series of events in the interest of the long-term U.S. interest. Phew, I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have time for a couple of questions.
I try to leave something. Yeah, please.
So, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it seems to me that we have to distinguish between the interests of North Korea as a political entity and the interests of Mr. Kim and his family, right?
Yeah.
My understanding, what I've read, I mean, Mr. Kim and his family eat pretty well, and most of the people in North Korea don't, right? So he needs to hang on to his personal and family interests to hang on to power. And it seems to me that nuclearization is a very important source of power for him.
Exactly.
So how do we distinguish, is that a more important consideration than the interests of the country maybe objectively defined?
If you ask that question to Kim Jong-un, the young leader, he would say, there's no difference between my interest and country's interest.
Right, we know better than that, right?
Yeah, but the dilemma that Kim is facing now is this. While they were developing nuclear programs, the country was left out without much economic improvement. So this is what I call nuclear dilemma for North Korea. In other words, for the last 20 years, their strategy has been, let's take care of the external environment first, and then come back to domestic agenda. But that international environment has never changed for them. So much so that now the economy actually teetering on the brink of the almost collapse. Many people who visited Pyongyang told me it's flourishing economy of high rocketing building. I don't believe it. I mean, there are enough high buildings in Moscow in collapse. So the high building is kind of symbol of his own, demonstrative leadership, nothing else. But deep down, as you said, beyond Pyongyang, the capital, people are suffering. But most critically, the institutional character of North Korean economic system is so blurry. In other words, I don't know whether it's even socialist, because so much underground economy now is in fashion in North Korea. For example, for a long time, state distribution system has ceased to function. So is it socialist or capitalist? To me, it's mind-boggling. I mean, to me, given the social science concept that I know, it's almost impossible to apply any concept to North Korea to describe, characterize the nature of this North Korea system. So that's the more critical issue to Kim Jong-un. In other words, it goes beyond his family. I think it's a matter of competition between North and South Korea. So if and unless Kim Jong-un has to do something about, let's say, reforming or improving economic system and then policies or outcomes, then, as you said, even there's no family interest in survival. So, to me, that's why, as I said earlier, while they're developing nuclear programs, they simultaneously actually sort of the economic sort of dilemma actually also at the same time developed in North Korea. So, how to narrow the gap? That's the challenge for Kim Jong-un.
We have time for one more question.
Do you think the recent change in U.S. and Russia nuclear policy, especially with regards to hypersonic missiles, will change how we approach North Korea's nuclear talks?
Well, now I can see the knowledge about all this because it's a very critical question. Also, the INF treaty issue between Soviet Union and Russia and the United States. Right? Trump is threatening to stop or withdraw from INF treaty or something. So far, there's no visible connection so it's separate. Why? If they try to incorporate the North Korean issue into this, then things will be complicated. And also, it'll the sort of it means boost up the status of North Korea for no reason. So I don't think U.S. would go along with this idea. There's a rumor. There's a rumor that if U.S. withdraws from this INF treaty, they might start negotiating not only with Russia but also with China. So the issue would become more or less overall global politics, not only about intermediate nuclear issue, weapon issue. It's going to develop into, let's say, for example, even the sort of a Kissingerian paradigm of thinking. Now, what about incorporating Russia as a way of containing China, for example? So INF issue, to me, is not only technical nuclear issue here. I think it could involve more broader geopolitical issues.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I think our time is up. Let me remind you again, we have our Politics and Media Symposium Thursday at 4:30 in Gertsen. Join me now. Let me thank all of you for coming out today. Join me now in thanking Professor Hopper.